Okay, admit all. Good. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the session. Hello, Janaki. Am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Yes, actually, you got it.
Phew. Thank you.
Very
People's
few
names
people
is
get
important.
it.
I got to get it right. Okay,
Very few
Janaki.
people get it. So hats off to you.
Well, how about that? Where are you seated today?
I'm in West Palm, Florida.
Okay. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
Um, oh, this is so interesting. We have multiple people under the name Maria Heredia. Not sure how that happened, but we've got more coming in. Um, Ladies and gentlemen, take a look at the name under your image, and if you click three buttons and then go down a few sections, you'll see something that says rename. It looks like I'm going to guess that one of the registration forms populated everyone's names this way. You, of course, are welcome to leave it as you like. I just won't be able to speak to you directly if you've got the wrong name. So, Christopher, thank you. Welcome, Christopher. And Stoli, is that how we pronounce it? Stoli, okay, wonderful. Hello, Vanessa. Vanessa, how would I go about saying your last name?
Rauschenberger.
Rauschenberger. Okay, that flows much easier than it reads. I think I can hopefully handle that one. Let's see. Good. And Diana, of course, I'll have you watch the waiting room. We can bring people in. You can decide what to do with these note takers, these note taking apps. Ladies and gentlemen, you will be receiving both the slides as well as an ebook that's going to come to you. So everything that you see here will wind up in your inbox with the hope that you're able to hang out, scribble some important notes, and we'll send you the whole shot of everything later. And then we are also recording this. Wow, we have a lot of Marias in the room. Diana, you may want to double check co-host uh, permissions. Could be, should be, good. Okay. All right. Well, I would say, ladies and gentlemen, let's get started. Welcome to Stakeholder Centered Coaching, where we believe everyone deserves a stakeholder centered leader. Today is February 12th, Thursday. It is about 10:02 a.m. here in the beautiful Pacific Northwest. I'm seated right on the natural boundary between Oregon and Washington State on the Columbia River. And we have an unusually lovely day. Normally, this period of time is cold and wet and gray. And unfortunately, we have blue skies and sun. So if you're up here in the Northwest, you know how passionate we are about our rainy days. So, as passionate as I am about wet weather, I'm equally passionate or more about coaching. And what we're going to talk about today is so important to me that I'm thrilled to get to share it with you as well. So, quick show of thumbs. Everyone can see okay, everyone can hear okay. If I can get some feedback, perfect. I got about 3 thumbs there. Okay, there we go. Got a few more. Welcome, welcome. Good. So as we are getting started, ladies and gentlemen, go to your chat box and tell me, where are you calling from today? One of the deep joys of doing this session is getting to connect with people from all over the world. And I love to know where we're calling from. Let's see, we have Zuleka. Oh, you're going to have to help me say that correctly. Calling in from Islamabad, Pakistan. Stoli in Norway, Niha in Mumbai. Janaki in West Palm Beach, Florida. Christopher in Oslo. Awesome. We have someone in California. Joel in India. Aaron in Austin, Minnesota. Maria in. We have a lot of people named Maria. If your name is Maria Heredia, please go ahead and change on Zoom just so I can talk to you directly. If you want to leave it as such, that's fine. Joseph in Illinois, Germany, Reno, Tahoe, Ohio, Bangalore, California, Turkey, Switzerland, Jordan, Beijing, Mozambique. I mean, look at this. Nigeria, Pennsylvania, Brussels, Colombia, Brazil, Egypt, China. Friends, when was the last time that you got to sit in a room with this many people from this many places? Egypt, China, South Africa, Ecuador, San Diego. My goodness, we are just all over the place. That is how we know today is going to be especially fun. So since we're on the topic of introductions, I will introduce Marshall and myself, and then we're going to get right into the focus of today's dialogue. Now, here on screen, you'll see a few of the key accolades of his, but you can find this stuff anywhere online. I know that you came here to hear the stories that you're not going to get anywhere else. So what I like to do here is tell the story about the moment that Marshall taught me one of the most valuable leadership lessons I've ever received in my life. It was 11 or so years ago at this point that I first got to see Marshall in action as he was coaching. And he was working with a leader who was just absolutely the smartest person in the room. No matter where they were always the smartest person in the room. They were also a fast decision maker. They were good at debate. They were abrasive. They were known as something of a steamroller. I suspect everybody in the room knows somebody like this. Now, at the point Marshall was brought in, several consultants had already struck out with trying to wow the team with their prescriptions and their analysis, but then, of course, failing to deliver. And instead of giving it advice or lecturing, as I expected the old professor to do, Marshall asked what became a monumental question. And it set me on the course for my career as a coach. That question was a perfect illustration for the stakeholder-centered approach that we're going to be discussing today. He stood in front of the room and he asked, what would make working with this leader better for you? What would make working with this leader better for you? And in that moment, I realized that what made Marshall so extraordinary is that he wasn't just imparting leadership skills, he was teaching people fundamentally how to connect and genuinely improve together for one another. This human approach is why his coaching has completely transformed hundreds of thousands of leaders around the globe and raised the profile of so many coaches like you and I. Good, Donna, I see that your camera's having an issue. That's fine. Hang out and enjoy the time. Hang out and enjoy. Good. For those of you who are just coming in, you will be receiving these slides as well as an ebook with everything we're discussing here. So if you're taking notes, don't take notes to capture, take notes to remember. Take notes for the things that stand out to you the most. We'll be getting everything else to you near the end of the day. So that moment with Marshall didn't just open my eyes to a new way of coaching. This completely changed the trajectory of my career. I saw how someone could use one simple piece of curiosity to begin to shape an entire organization's culture, and how the coach would rather naturally be attributed for that impact. And that was when I knew I wanted to dedicate my life to this work. Over the past decade, I've had the honor of learning directly from and being coached by people like Marshall Goldsmith, Chris Coffey, Dr. Frank Wagner, all in service of carrying forward the legacy of stakeholder-centered coaching. So if we have not yet had the pleasure of meeting, hello, everyone. I'm Brandon Mergard, CEO of Stakeholder-Centered Coaching. And my journey as a coach is rooted in the same philosophy that Marshall embodies. It's that real leadership is about creating positive, measurable, sustainable changes for yourself and for the people around you. Since learning this, I've worked with thousands of leaders and trained thousands more coaches. But what drives me every day is this belief that leadership is bigger than behavioral skills. Leadership is a responsibility to raise those around us. And you'll find that this is the ethos of stakeholder centered coaching. As an organization, we believe some pretty crazy things. We believe that change should be simple. We believe that results should be measurable. And we believe that success in coaching and for leaders, it should be guaranteed. That is a bit wild, but what we do is we look for coaches like you who believe the same things. And then we work with coaches and train them to deliver these guaranteed behavioral results in 12 months or less. Over the past 30 years, our methodology has been employed by more than half of the executive teams in the Fortune 500. We've been recognized as the world's #1 coach training program by numerous bodies, including the World HRD Congress and the Global Gurus. And of course, at the heart of it is people like you. Coaches who understand that leadership, by definition, is a social process, not an internal one. And therefore, leadership effectiveness is predicated on the regular interactions that you have as a leader with those you serve. So this is my thesis. This is the thesis and what I'll attempt to argue over our scheduled 2 hours. Leadership is a dialogue. Learn the language of the people to become a great leader. This will be our focus as you learn the methodology that guarantees your ability to teach and coach this effectively. So, what are the objectives of today's session? I'm going to share my objectives for the session. And while I'm doing this, I want to invite you to do something important, which is go to your chat and share your objective. I have my slide deck. I know where I'm going. I've presented this to more than 10,000 people in the last 18 months. What I want to do is to understand where are the side paths we can go? Where are the areas that are most interesting to you? And what is it that will feel like value when we close the session today? What is it that you'd like to stick in your pocket and have new you'd like to see or understand? So share that in the chat, because that is going to set the sequence of discussion for today. While you're doing that, my objective is, well, a bit self-explanatory. It's to teach you how to coach like Marshall Goldsmith, the world's #1 executive coach. Now, that means this is a teaching session. Actually, I'm going to invite my friend Laura up to the stage. If we can get a spotlight on you. Laura is here. She's helped hundreds of coaches understand, what does this look like for their unique situation? What does this look like for their clients, for their industry, for their geography? What I want to make very clear is this is a teaching session. It's important that I align our expectations that this is a teaching event. For those of you who want to practice this as a coach seriously, or as I say, for those of us who want to affiliate with Marshall but don't want to lose our hair and grow a beard, you can connect with Laura. She's happy to talk with you about our range of trainings and our certifications. She's guided, as I mentioned, hundreds of coaches looking at their futures to decide how to best serve their clients. She's here to help. You can also reach out in the chat. On that note, I have 7 different screens up. The chat, I have your faces, my slides. communication with the team, if you see my eyes darting around, it is not a signal of disengagement. It's actually a signal of being hyper engaged. So thank you in advance for that. So I intend to teach how to coach like Marshall Goldsmith, and this segues to what I find to be quite a reasonable question I receive at the end of these trainings, which is, Brandon, if your business is predicated on teaching this methodology to coaches, why on earth would you give it away for free? I think that's a reasonable question. How many of you can resonate with that question? The answer has to do with my purpose in life. My purpose is to influence others to be more stakeholder centered. Plain and simple. I want to influence others to be more stakeholder centered. Because if I truly believe beyond a shadow of all doubt that I know something special, that's simple, accessible, effective, and it can, help others have a better life, then I believe that I also have a moral obligation to share this far and wide. And that's why our motto, ladies and gentlemen, is everyone deserves a stakeholder-centered leader. We have a moral duty, a moral imperative to teach this with no obligation to you. So that whether you are a senior executive or an executive coach or a school teacher or author or chef or parent or baker or firefighter, you can apply what you learned here today to be more stakeholder-centered in your respective field. So I teach here to give back, hopefully to make the world a little bit better, and to reward those of you who are willing to make the investment necessary to help others do the same thing. This is easy stuff. This is simple stuff. Simple, but not easy. And I invite you to understand exactly what that means today. So thank you for helping me fulfill my duty. Let's check in on some of these objectives. Christian is to get insights on how to grow leaders. Good. You're going to like section 2. We're going to get right into the logistics of that. How to make my coaching more effective and long-term shift. Perfect. We're going to go into that. And in section 3, we'll talk about the efficacy rate of it. Susie, what a delight to see your name here. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're not connected with Susie, she just dropped an amazing book, Head Mentals. Susie, if you've got an Amazon link or something, throw that in the chat because I am a big fan of your work. I'm looking for new insights about SEC and, of course, to be in your presence. What a sweetheart. It's so good to see you, Susie. Aaron, my objective, tips and tricks to ask impactful, thought-provoking questions. Good. I'm going to give you 3 questions today, Aaron. If by the end of the session you haven't caught them, I'll try to signpost them, but I'll give you the summary. Good. Same here. How to make my clients better leaders by raising their self-awareness. In section 2, we're going to talk about Feedforward, and that is where you're going to get the greatest, most potent tool in self-awareness that also bypasses criticism. Joseph, what are the essential characteristics in choosing, accepting the right client? I will aim to address this, Joseph, largely in section 1, but I'm happy to stick around to go deeper. The focus isn't client selection today. We're talking about once you've got the right client, what do you do with them? How to encourage leaders to invite feed forward. Perfect. Stoli, borrowing from leadership definition. Leadership is to get results in a way that enhances trust. You're going to love what you learned today, Stoli. And also, Stoli, if you have other questions, tap Laura on the shoulder. If you have questions about the program and how to just talk to her, also happy to stick around for any of you who want to go deeper. Donna, grow insights into how to coach peers. Yeah, this is a cool process for peer coaching where 2 people are growing together. Help people grow their personal capability and confidence. Perfect. So they don't depend on me. Shamala. Boy, I hope I'm saying that correct. If not, please correct me. This entire model is aimed at avoiding dependence. Everything we do is, how do we make the leader self-sufficient? How do we install this into the culture so the coach can leave and not be necessary? But because you've created that trust and that sustainability, you're not moving out, you're moving down, or you're moving up in the organization. This is a absurdly simple business development plan as well. Ideas on helping nudge executives when top leader is getting ready to retire. This is a really cool succession plan tool, Lori. We won't go deep into it. The succession side of it, I'll try to integrate that, but happy to stick around and talk. How is this type of coaching used among senior executives in higher education? Just as a point of reference, we are partnering right now with Sarasota University and IE University. Sarasota in Florida, IE in Spain, one of the top MBA programs on the planet, so that we can deliver this to people in higher education. And next month or the month after, I'll be speaking at the CAP Alliance, which is specifically how to apply this in higher education. So the name here for this objective is guest. I don't know who you are, but I recommend getting in touch with Laura so we can keep you apprised of what this looks like. And Laura, also, you can connect them with Bill Summers, who would be our director for SEC and education. Petra, when coaching at large corporations, coaches need to closely navigate development, at the same time, external perception. I'm about to go into a phase 2, and I want to be very clear. The coach believe we need to do so change works and stick. Feed forward with the boss is one possible step. Perfect. Petra, ask away as you go through this. Christopher Marshall says, being a successful leader is only about human relationships. Bingo. I don't need to understand your business. Correct. I don't think you have to understand a leader's business, but it never hurts. My learning from a stakeholder-centered leadership, this is that a team invents itself when collaborating in the service of humankind. And what must a leader do to create a team culture to achieve this? Christopher, you're going to learn the one-on-one model today. And I think any coach worth their salt will instantly see how this can be applied by teams. Happy to stick around and talk about team applications afterwards. Last one. What is stakeholder-centered coaching and what does it look like? Boy, I like that question because right after the agenda, we're going to answer that question. What is stakeholder-centered coaching and what does it look like? So we have our objectives. I've got yours. And my aim, based on what we've said, is to address every one of these. So stick around. As we get through this, you're going to get answers to each and every one of these questions. How will we do that? We're going to begin by looking at the foundations of stakeholder-centered coaching, including the principles that underpin the process, the role of stakeholders in the coaching, as well as the importance of measuring change. And friends, you're going to see me completely hung up on measurement today, because this is one of the most important part of coaching that most of us are missing, which, by the way, if any of you have experienced the tinges of imposter syndrome for more than a month in the last 12 months, this is the panacea. Because the fastest way out of imposter syndrome is to build yourself a mountain of empirical evidence that you can do what you say you can do. And when the evidence of that is limited to the inside of how the leader feels, you will always be riddled with imposter syndrome. When you can look at your desk and see a stack of 40 mini surveys where you have measured the leader's growth from the eyes of people around them, that's when you say, I don't have to prove that I can do what I say I can do. I've already done it. My job is now finding the best leaders in the world that I can access and give this to. That is a non-trivial value proposition for coaches. So we'll talk a lot about this today. After this, we'll get into the framework where we'll explore this as a 5-step approach. Those of you who said you want techniques, questions, approaches, this is where you're going to get it, is in 2.1. We'll also be talking about some of the, what I call stakeholder-centered habits, the critical leadership habits that drive this whole process. And of course, the how, the engineering side, how do we actually measure change? I'll give you the questions we use. You can create your own reports royalty-free and use them ad nauseum. I have crammed as much value into this as we possibly can, so that when we get to section 3, we're able to talk about the research. And I'm going to introduce some of the real world studies that we've conducted over the past 20 years on 6 continents, as well as the practical implications for coaches. so that these concepts come to life. By the time we say goodbye today, you will know, number one, how to construct a permanent support system around the leader by systematically involving stakeholders. Those of you who want to get off of dependency, this is where you're going to find that. Secondly, we're going to talk about how you can drive deep, sustainable motivation for action plans and some of the techniques as well as questions you can use to both set the stage for that and call upon it later when it's most needed. And finally, how you can demonstrate impact by measuring growth in leadership effectiveness. So if you're ready, go to your chat and give me a life is good. Right, life is good in the chat, and we will jump in the deep end. Which is really my stall tactic so I can wet my whistle. Thank you for that. Okay. So let's jump into things, beginning with a few definitions. Starting with, what the heck is this stakeholder-centered coaching thing we keep talking about? Stakeholder-centered coaching is a methodology that guarantees leaders achieve positive, sustainable, lasting changes in their leadership behavior for themselves, for their people, and for their teams. Good. This is a simple proposition, and it is that we measurably improve leadership effectiveness guaranteed. Now, this term leadership effectiveness is always brandished. It's thrown around without actually pinning down a definition. Who's heard this term leadership effectiveness? I think everyone's heard this. Let's try, who has heard someone put a definition to this term? Okay, good. So we're starting at a good spot. Throughout the professional and the academic literature, we see that leadership effectiveness is a function of the degree to which those around a leader perceive them as being a more effective leader. In other words, when people see me as effective, they're going to be willing to follow. And when people perceive me as an ineffective leader, they're going to go the other direction. So when it comes to leadership effectiveness, perception is reality. If you're taking notes, this is a writer downer. Perception is reality. Intentions do not put points on the board. When you are a leader, your expectations or your intentions do not build social equity with others. It is not even your behavior that builds that equity. Ooh, it is not the leadership behavior that builds that equity. Friends, it is the perception of that behavior. It is entirely possible to do the right behaviors every day and still come out on bottom. And I intend to demonstrate that with you here in just a moment. For those of you who are as geeky as I have, in the slides, I have put a bunch of citations that you can use to see what this actually looks like, how it's operationalized in the research. So you can enjoy some of those. Good. Thank you. Thank you, Bonita. Ladies and gentlemen, one of my favorite learners that ever joined a session said in the objectives, I want some nuggets. I want some wisdom nuggets today. And so anytime there was something they liked, they wrote nugget in the chat. It was just such a nice little pat on the back. Feel free to write nugget in the chat if there's anything here that especially resonates with you. So we've got these, we have got this definition in mind. And based on this, we established 3 key principles that would allow us to enhance leadership effectiveness. Here's what they are. We're going to dive into each one at a time. Good. So number 1 is place attention and focus on stakeholders. Place attention and focus on stakeholders. But why, Brandon? Why do we? I have other people who are getting coached down the hall. They don't have to check in with anybody. They don't have to talk about what they're working on. Why do I? Oh. It's because stakeholders are the best, most informed experts on how a leader's behavior is affecting them. That makes their suggestions absolutely invaluable. And yet, how often do we go to a textbook for the answer? The answers are in the system. Your job is to bring them to the leader and help them figure out what to do with it. I'll frequently explain this to leaders who say, oh, feed forward, feedback. Yeah, that all sounds, I don't think I want people talking about me. I say, my friend, they are already talking about you. The things that they absolutely disdain, they're talking about it every day. My job is to help you be the one they talk to about it and to decide what you want to do about it. But mark my words, they're already talking about it. So what do? We place attention and focus on the stakeholders. What is a stakeholder? It's someone who's interdependent with the leader. Meaning when the leader has better behavior, the stakeholder's quality of work improves. The quality of performance improves. And what we find, and this is what really excites me, their quality of life tends to improve as well. That's some pretty cool stuff. Principle number 2, emphasize feed forward over feedback. Feedback is about a past that we cannot control. Feed forward is suggestions about a future over which I have complete control. Unless you are as bad a driver as I am, you know the right way to drive is looking through your windshield at what's ahead, not at the rearview mirror at what's behind. I don't recommend stepping into the passenger side of my vehicles. Feed forward also does something pretty interesting in social relationships. It turns pokey statements, prickly statements like, boy, you really frustrated me in that meeting today, into something more palatable and actionable. You know, it would sure be nice if you asked for my opinion before jumping to the final conclusions of the meeting. Feed forward becomes a call to adventure, whereas feedback is ruminating on the past. So number 1 is place attention and focus on stakeholders. Number 2 is emphasize feed forward over feedback. And number 3 is change perception and behavior in parallel. Change behavior and perception in parallel. Now, I'm going to ask you a question. Let's do this. Go to your chat, ladies and gentlemen. Which do we think, amongst the two, which is more difficult to change? Perception or behavior? Go to your chat, give me a one-word answer. What is more complicated to change, perception or behavior? Good. I see some of these questions coming in the chat. If I don't answer them immediately, my team is grabbing them and we'll be working right through them near the end. Well, this is interesting because usually the group either gets it overwhelmingly correct or overwhelmingly wrong. And I think it has more to do with my situating the question than the question itself. Well, let's do this. I want to illustrate this and why stakeholder centered coaching is important. Okay? Show of hands. How many of us have seen a Roman numeral clock before? Everyone seen a Roman numeral clock? Yeah, I think this is a pretty common thing. If you haven't, I took some pictures from my closet this morning. Yeah, these are not my watches. These are Roman numeral clocks. Each and every one of us have seen these hundreds, if not thousands of times, right? I grew up with a grandfather clock in the hallway. I've seen it tens of thousands of times. And I still got this question wrong. Let's see if you do. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a perfect analogy for coaching and for the importance of coaching and the value of behavioral science and behavioral economics. So go to your chat and tell me, what does a 10 on a Roman numeral, let me take this off before I ask, what does a 10 on Roman numeral clock look like? Oh, Jorg, you were the very first one. Now, my question was about the 10, not about the social media platform formerly known as Twitter, but I'll accept X as the answer. Why not? Good. What does a 5 look like, ladies and gentlemen? Tell me, what does a 5 look like? Good. It's a V. That wasn't too difficult. It's a V, right? Good. What does a 4 look like? Good. IV, right? 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 We've seen this thousands of times. It's got to be IV, right? Let's see if my slides can get back where they need to be. Come on. What is it, ladies and gentlemen? Stoli has it. Lori has it. Oh my God. How many times have we seen a Roman numeral clock? And guess what? Since the age of the Romans, it has been 4 eyes on 98% of all. Petra's correct. The clocks are wrong, not us. Not us. Yeah, right? This is one of those moments when you say, what on earth is going on? We see 4 eyes for hundreds and hundreds of years. This has been convention. Now, why? And there's various theories on why, but why do we think, even though it is completely unsupported by reality, why do we feel so convinced that it is IV, despite seeing this hundreds of times? Why do we still see things inaccurately? Good. And just so we're clear, I'm not saying that 4 eyes is the correct Roman writing. It's on clocks. There's some theories about Jupiter. There's some theories about symmetry. Other interesting things, if you notice, clocks are almost always pointed at the 10 and the 2. Sometimes it's pointed at 3 o'clock. This is fairly unusual, but there's a lot of conventions. Dr. Diana, I love this. I checked with ChatGPT and it says IV. Friends, IV is the Roman numeral for 4. What is bonkers is on watches, it is 4 eyes. What's even more bananas is that we have been tricked to expect. We have been conditioned to expect IV, but it has not been IV for any one of our lifetimes. Why? It's because we will see what we expect to see. Ooh. This is where most coaching is getting things wrong. We see what we want to see. This is motivated reasoning. I'd encourage any one of you to check out the work by Dr. Jonathan Haidt at the Stern School of Business at NYU. As humans, we look for data to support our conclusions rather than drawing conclusions based on the data. And I can already see some of you with higher education saying, oh, no, Brandon, not me. Poor me. No. I have a PhD in drawing conclusions after seeing the data. The data show, in fact, that the smarter, the more educated, and often the more successful you are, the more susceptible perhaps we are to this phenomena. This is becoming identity protective cognition, but let me ask you this. If this phenomena is positively correlated with education, with achievement, with success, do you think things get better or worse at the very top of organizations? It gets much, much worse. Don't think that being smart gets you off the hook. In fact, it tends to put you further on it. Okay, this is well established in the psychological literature, the organizational behavioral literature, and social science. My understanding is confirmation bias is a subset of motivated reasoning, but I am not a psychologist. Guest, I'm not sure your name, but just so we're clear, these are 2 different pieces, confirmation bias and motivated reasoning. One is conclusions and then find data to support, and the other is interpreting data to support the conclusions. It's nuanced, but I think functionally you can probably call them fairly similar. The kicker here is that if I think my boss, and boy, have we seen this before, if I think my boss is a bad communicator, then I am constantly on the lookout for evidence that she is a bad communicator, even when presented with overwhelming data to the contrary. Even though we have looked at Roman numeral clocks our entire life, we still see what we expect to see. So this third principle of changing behavior and perception in parallel is important because, friends, perception is much harder to change than behavior. And yet, how much of our coaching focuses simply on behavior? Ladies and gentlemen, we are waging a war with the least potent tools at our disposal when we focus only on behavior. Why? Because the truth is, if I want to change my behavior, I change it. Now, it can be more complicated than that, but let's say I'm at work and I'm making destructive comments. I want to stop. Let's imagine there was a switch in my brain and I just shut it off. People are still going to see what they're looking for. If I want to be seen as someone who has stopped making destructive comments, first I change the behavior, and then I still have all my work ahead of me to get people to believe that this is real. This is what the new normal is. And friends, this is why so many coaching initiatives fall flat on their face, because we just focus on behavior. But you see, perceptions, those things are resilient. And the cruel irony is they tend to lag far behind the real progress the leader has made in their behavior. So what? What's the cost of all this? We demand a world of sweat equity and effort from the leaders we're working with, and yet we provide very little changes in real leadership effectiveness. In the second section of today's dialogue, we're going to talk about the simple method you can use from today for free to change perceptions and behavior in parallel. So with that, let's turn our attention to section 1.2, which is the role of stakeholders in coaching. Good. Thank you so much for the nuggets. Every time I see that, it's just like a little spoon of sugar. It's just nice. Thank you very much. Good. Yeah. Bonita said, I've seen this happen with an organization I was working with. People were talking about the past behavior of a team member, and she said she had changed. You know what's really a bummer, Bonita? She maybe did change. Doesn't matter. We don't get points for intention. We don't get points for behavior. We get points for the perception of that behavior. Actually, funny enough, last night, my wife and I were talking about something, and I said, here's the things I've been doing to address that. Isn't this like reducing let's say the everyday burden from your shoulders? I took this off your plate, that off your plate, that off your plate. She said, no, actually, that puts more stress on me. I said, I've been working very hard on this for months. She said, yeah, it actually adds stress. Oh, if I had just asked. It is amazing that we do not get credit for what we've done well. We get credit when people notice that we've done things well. Yeah, she probably changed to a point. So that's why stakeholders are so important. Let's talk about their role. In the context of stakeholder-centered coaching, what is a stakeholder? Well, number one, it is someone who is directly affected by a leader's behavior. Therefore, they've got very insightful feedback. Typically, these are people who have worked with the leader regularly, and they are interdependent to some degree. So by and large, this is our direct reports. Usually a few peers are included and maybe a manager. And they contribute to the coaching process in a few different ways. The first is they provide essential feedback that helps leaders to understand how their behavior is perceived by others. Now, in stakeholder-centered coaching, we use this feedback at the very beginning and at the end, but the rest is feed forward. And that comes to role number two. Stakeholders offer support and reinforcement for the leader. Bonita, this is perhaps what was missing. They support the leader because their ongoing interactions with the leader allows them to notice. It allows them to reinforce the positive changes. These day-to-day interactions are haphazard unless we're saying, Bonita, as you know, I'm working on this. And so here's what you can expect from me in the next 60 minutes during this meeting. By the way, could I follow up with you at the end of this meeting just to check in and see how I've done? You're reinforcing and therefore solidifying the new, more effective behaviors. Another key piece is they hold the leader accountable. How often do we as coaches outsource accountability to the leader? Hey, leader who has spent time with me, who has been vulnerable with me, who has tried new things that's made you uncomfortable. You think this effort of yours has been worthwhile? Yeah, little bit of bias in there, perhaps. Don't outsource it to the leader. Leverage it with the stakeholders. When the leader knows, when they step on campus every day or turn on their Zoom, and they know that those around me will have their eyes and they're looking for this specific goal, this specific behavior, boy, are they more likely to stay committed to doing what they said they're going to do. Good. As I'll quote Ken Blanchard when he says, none of us is as smart as all of us. Stakeholders, likewise, often have a different angle of their relationship with the leader, and therefore they can provide unique, let's say, a variety of viewpoints that help the leader to gain a very comprehensive understanding of their impact on others. And one of the most important contributions, and again, Bonita, this is, if all that anybody did was add this to the end of their engagements that they're already doing, your life will change. Your life will change. The leader's life will change, as will the stakeholders. But it's not going to be a feeling. It's going to be an empirical measure wrapped up in a qualitative story with the real roots being deep in the hearts of the people who are influenced by the leader you are coaching. They validate the leader's change. It is not enough. It has never been enough. It will never be enough for the leader to simply feel that they have changed. Stakeholders must also perceive that change. They must acknowledge that change for it to be considered successful. Can I get an amen? My goodness, this is serious work we're doing here, friends. This is important. But why? Why is it so important that they validate the leader's change? Other than, of course, the examples we have where we say, I saw the leader change, the leader saw themselves change, the boss said they changed, but nobody else does. What gives? This is the importance of behavioral change. Measuring change in coaching is of paramount importance. Why? It is the only way to provide an objective assessment on whether the coaching was truly effective. Ooh, that speaks right to the heart of imposter syndrome. What's the objective validation that I get as a coach, that the leader gets as the leader, that the stakeholders get in exchange for their vulnerability of giving feedback? The discomfort of letting go of the past, the discomfort of saying, hey, you've been doing really well, but in that last meeting, you really dropped the ball. I'm expecting more. Let's see what you have next week. Ooh, these people need something back. And a pat on the back and a leader standing up and saying, boy, have I been awesome. It's not enough. Measurement is the only way to objectively assess whether you were effective as a coach. Leadership improvement is quantified through the perception of stakeholders. These are the people who are most affected by the leader's behavior. How do we do this? Well, we use a tool called the mini survey. I'm going to tell you how it works right now. You can make your own. There's no royalties. There's no licensing. This is in the public domain because we believe this will change the world and we want to invite you to be a part of it. We use a tool called the mini survey. This is an anonymous online survey that protects the confidentiality of stakeholders, allowing them to provide more honest and credible feedback. Now, the survey asks the stakeholders to rate the leader's improvement on a 7-point Likert scale from -3 to +3. You've gotten much worse. You've gotten much better. Oh, but Brandon, what about a benchmark? What about a benchmark? Is there truly a benchmark out there that's relevant to any one leader? No, this is the law of averages. Do you need a benchmark? Maybe. I can tell you what stakeholders are far less impressed with is how the leader scored on 1 to 100 scales versus how are they actually improving. Because once you hit a 98 on that 100-point scale, there's not a lot of headroom to grow. You're kind of stuck there. When you have a -3 to +3, baby, you've got an entire life, an entire career of development ahead of you. Now, for us, the key measure of success is getting a +1 or greater average. And that is the aggregate of all responses divided by the number of responses. That number should be +1 or higher to be considered successful, at least for us. But this approach ensures that the leadership development isn't just an internal feeling. It's not, I'm aligned. It is, I am recognized, I am acknowledged, I am seen by and validated by the people who actually matter. This is rigorous, and it holds the leader as well as the coach accountable for real, observable, tangible changes. Good. Now we're going to get deeper on the measurement piece in a moment, but if you're ready to get into the process, write process in the chat, and we're going to get right into the methodology. Oh, I got a comment. Sarah, you lost me with the survey. Where can I find an example? This is so relevant for me. Sarah and everyone else, at the end of the session, we're going to send an ebook with all of this. It's going to include a picture of the survey. It's going to include the question, and the ranking is -3 to +3. Do yourself a favor and go to MailChimp.com or Alchema or whatever your survey software is. Throw this in and make yourself a survey. Start measuring. I'll tell you what, if every coach on the planet started doing this tomorrow, guess what's going to happen? The top talent is going to rise to the top. Instantly. Anyone who's not doing this is going to float straight to the bottom. Because this is the language of organizations. What's our KPIs? What's our goals? What's our achievement? What's our quarterly fiscal report? That's this for coaching. So friends, it is no wonder why most coaches don't do this. It's accountability for the coach just as much as it is for the leader. That's scary. If you've ever had the bite of imposter syndrome, that's scary too. This is your antidote. This is what gets you through the other side. And by the way, boy, this is a hard pill to swallow, or was a hard pill for me. I hope it's not so hard for you. The day I woke up and realized that I had some insecurities about my ability to deliver on the promises that I'm making, I got to thinking, if it's hard for me, how much harder is it for the client across the table from me? How much harder is it to raise my prices when my capacity is full? How much harder is it to reach for the higher levels in organizations? You can use this. So Sarah, you're going to get this. You're going to get the questions, the scaling. Start using it. You will be shocked at what you find. Hopefully in a good way. Good. So Sarah, could you just give me some feedback and make sure that I've addressed that? Diana, I am not recommending MailChimp. Thanks for pointing that out. I don't know, used them a decade and a half ago, and they happened to have a free tier at that time. I don't know what people are using now. Stakeholder Centered Coaches have access to a proprietary report, data cutting, etc. You can make your own anytime. So now we're going to get into the process, the actual method of applying this. So those of you who said, I want the techniques, the questions, I want to know how to influence someone, how do we do this in a team model, I'll try to touch on. Again, throw your questions in. If I don't address them right away, it's because I'm saving them. Good. So we're going to begin by looking at the methodology as a 5-step process. Okay? A 5-step process. And that's what this is. It's linear. It fits on a one page as a waterfall project. I frequently say, this is Project U. If Susie's my client, I say, this is Project Susie. Here's where Susie starts. Here's who's involved in her success plan. Here's where she finishes. Here's what the measure of success is. Here's who gets the report. Here's who does the final meeting. And here's how we know when we were successful. Boy, I'll tell you what, clients love this. People in operations, people in engineering and science, people in finance who are used to structuring things, they love this. So let's look at this as a 5-step process, and we'll go through them one at a time. Step 1 is we pick a goal and identify stakeholders. Just so we're clear, this is not choose stakeholders. This is not a creative process. We'll talk about how you pick the right ones. Step 2 is to enroll stakeholders in the process. Let them know what you're doing. Tell them what you're going to be focused on. Ask for their buy-in. Step 3 is action plan using Feedforward. Next, we're going to involve stakeholders monthly, and this is where a lot of our coaching creativity happens. And step 5 is to measure changes in perception. So take a moment and just take a look at this. Take a moment and just soak it in. Good, Chantal. I love this question. Laura, if we can cue that to be the first one we discuss during Q&A. The short answer, Chantal, is this is actually very simple. It's not tremendously uncommon. And just as an added cliffhanger, where you start is almost never where you wind up. Actually, I can say from my experience, having mentored 3,000 coaches and having done my own engagements and been involved with many others, I have never seen this occur and finish in the same position. So we'll talk about what you can do. Good. Now, at this stage, I hope you're looking at this and scratching your head a bit. I hope it's just a wee bit confusing for you to look at this and say, well, I have been exposed to numerous coaching models with varying degrees of complexity, and this one's only got 5 steps. Can it really be all that it's hyped up to be? Is that it? Here's the thing. This model is deceptively simple. Deceptively simple. And that, by the way, is your advantage in selling this as a service, because it's so simple to understand, but it's not so easy to do. In fact, I'll go ahead and make a prediction. And I've made this prediction many times. I have yet to see it fail, but hey, there's a first time for everything. I predict that 98% of us are going to get it. Well, just the first go around, it's like, okay, yeah, I understand it. I know what this is now, done. The majority of you are going to tell yourself that you can do this too. You can, and you should. That's why we're doing this. You will wholeheartedly commit to doing it. But the truth is, less than 5% of you are going to have the discipline necessary to do anything with what you've learned today. Don't be discouraged. Don't give up. Thank you, Susie. It was lovely to see you. We'll catch up. Don't be discouraged and don't give up if this is you, because as I mentioned at the end of the session, we're going to send you the step-by-step guide so you know what you're doing and when. And when you're ready to take this seriously and go into a real deep dive, you'll speak with Laura to consider getting certified. So we're going to jump into step 1, which is pick a goal and identify stakeholders. Now, let's start with the primary requirements for what does it mean to pick the right goal. I teach that the right goal achieves triple alignment. And this isn't figure skating or ski jump. Triple alignment means that this goal is something that's important to stakeholders, it's important to the leader, and it's important to the organization. How do we get to triple alignment? Well, here's what we do. We typically begin with some form of feedback. And this is the only time besides the end when feedback is truly necessary. And I will argue in a separate masterclass that we can actually do better coaching without feedback, but that's a conversation for another time. But typically we do something like behavioral interviews, a structured 360, any one of these. Now, some of you are asking for questions, so I'm going to speed run very quickly. Laura, actually, if you can type this as we talk, because someone said they want to know questions to get better feedback. Here's 5 questions that I use in every behavioral interview. I teach these 5 questions. I learned them from Marshall. I make very little modifications, and I almost never make it more complex. Number 1, what are the leader's strengths? Number 2, what are the areas for the leader to develop? Number 3, what are the environments that bring out the worst in this leader? And what are the environments that bring out the best? Boy, that is a very telling question. And question 5 is, if you were this person's boss, mentor, or coach, what advice would you have for them? 5 questions. Laura, if you caught that, throw it in the chat. I just want to make sure we're delivering on everyone's expectations. Oh, look at you. Awesome. Good. What are their strengths, areas to develop, environments that bring out the best and worst? And then what advice? My friend and master coach, Jathan Janov, simplified this further. If you'd like, he asks 3-3-1. What are 3 of the leader's strengths, 3 areas to develop? And if you could pick their goal, what would you pick? And this can be done in person as an interview. It could be done by email. I skew towards interviews and I use these 5 questions. Good. So at the end of the feedback, what I now know without question is what's important to the stakeholders, right? I'm going to take all of these inputs, create behavioral themes at the top, and then show them this is what your people are looking for. The next step is to debrief. What was important to the stakeholders, and now we want to know what's important to the leader. Oh, I am missing something here in my slides. Just a moment. Oh, wow, look at that. Just a moment. I'm using Keynote. If any of you have had the displeasure of swapping from PowerPoint to Keynote, boy, you know exactly what's going on. There we go. So after the debrief, we're going to find out what's important to the leader. Now, what's fun, and I have an activity for us to do at the end if we'd like, but I'd like to show you how we validate whether this is important for the leader. And it's something we can do as a group activity. It's a technique you can take and start using right away. So I'll save that for the end because I want to get you all of the material first. So we're going to find out what's important to stakeholders and then what's important to the leader. And I want to flag that this is a funnel. Give us all the rich inputs. Now that we have that, let's funnel down from that, based on what's important to stakeholders, what is also important to the leader. And then we go a step further to get the sponsor or the manager to sign off that these are the right, this is the right goal. The last thing you want to do is coach for 12 months, only to finish with positive results. And the sponsor says, yeah, that isn't what we wanted them to focus on. So we create this triple alignment at the outset. By the end of step 1, you have a goal that's important to the stakeholders, to the leader, and the organization. We've got triple alignment. So what is step 2? Step 2 is the enrollment meeting. This is the enrollment. Typically, this looks like a project kickoff meeting. This is Project Susie. Here's what we're going to be doing. This may be a dedicated event, or it can be just tagged on to the end of another meeting with the relevant stakeholders. Now, what happens in the meeting? The leader is going to share the results of their feedback. Thank you for providing this feedback. I learned I'm doing these things well, and I also learned here's an area I can work on. I'm going to share my goal. I will be focused over the next 12 months at improving this, and the only way for me to do this is to know what's important to you. So what kind of alignment gets created here? By the end of the meeting, stakeholders understand the coaching. They understand what their role in supporting is, and they're going to be asked to send feed forward over the next 48 hours to the leader on how to improve in their goal. That's it. At the end of the meeting, there is exceptional alignment. Now, to make this meeting so many successes begin in this meeting, getting everyone on the same page, setting the right expectations. And so in our training, we make this easy with the templates and real demonstrations from real clients and real enrollment meetings. But if you look on YouTube, you may be able to find something like this. The simple model is, thank you for the feedback. Here's what I learned. Here's what I'm working on. Here's your role. What questions do you have? Very, very simple, rudimentary things. Then the feed forwards are collected over the next 48 hours, which inform step 3. And this is where rubber starts to meet the road, is with, let's do this. Show of hands. How many of us have experienced feed forward before? Okay, let's do a quick little practice. I want you to imagine that I've come to you as my stakeholder, and I have said to you, I've said, I'm working on building cross-functional relationships. Albert, what suggestions do you have? Benita, what suggestions do you have? Bill, Christopher, what suggestions? Go to your chat and imagine I asked you this question. What suggestions do you have for how to be better at building cross-functional relationships? We're a bunch of smart coaches. Give me a suggestion in the chat. Let's see what comes through. I'm working on cross-functional relationships. What suggestions do you have as a coach that you could give me as a leader to improve at building cross-functional relationships? Put your answer in the chat. Good. Now, as you see some of the answers coming through, well, let's see these. Anne said, ensure you have frequency of encounters with people you're trying to build and repair relationships with. Watch this. Thank you, Anne. Watch this. Anne, great suggestion. Bonita, thank you. What did I just communicate? One is a good suggestion. One is a mediocre suggestion. The answer is thank you at all times. I had someone ask me in a training this week. They said, how do you get good at building this habit of just saying thank you every time feedback comes through? Because it's hard. Sometimes we're not happy about it. Sometimes it triggers rage or frustration or shame. I'm going to give you my secret. My secret is my vehicle. Because that thing beeps at me 100 times every time I'm driving somewhere. There's something behind you. The light just turned red. Someone took their seatbelt off. You're drifting out of your lane. Thank you, car. Thank you. I'm going to fix that. Thank you. I appreciate it. It builds the habit. In the worst of traffic, if I can train myself for 0 exceptions on kindness to something as inanimate as a vehicle, what am I going to do when I'm getting feed forward from my most valued employee? More importantly, what am I going to do when I get feed forward or feedback from my least valuable employee? Oh, you better believe my likelihood of reacting to the vehicle is just as high as to this other person who isn't working out so well. Build that habit. Good. Thank you, Anne. Bonita, determine which relationships are most important and come up with a plan to reach out to these people. Thank you. Guests, start listening to their objectives and your potential impact on them. Thank you. Guest, you just described feed forward. Lori, have coffee. I'm going to stop the suggestion right there and just say, thank you, Lori. How am I doing, Lori? Have you noticed any changes? Have coffee time chats with other functional leaders. Thank you. Peter, to build rapport, go see people more. Thank you. Thank you, Peter. Diana, organize cross-cultural relationships once a month or more frequently when the organization is smaller. Thank you. Who are the people who are most important? It's so funny. As coaches, we always respond to questions with more questions. We're such curious individuals, right? It's hard to just come out with suggestions. Good. Joint goals. Aim to learn more about other functions. Have monthly synergy meetings. Have people share their wish list. Petra, great. This is Feed Forward again. Set up regular meeting cadence and ask, what does a successful relationship look? Look, you are all doing Feed Forward already. And I want you to notice, this is a very important point here. How many of these suggestions judged my past behaviors? How many of them needed to be informed even by my past behaviors? How many of them am I likely to be offended by? How many of these are going to suck wind out of my sails? What if we had feedback session with the people that are important? I said, hey, how have I been doing on cross-functional relationships? The answer will be starkly different. And that is why Feed Forward is so important. Good. Petra said, is the coach in the Feed Forward meeting and what is their role? Love this. Love this. Good. So Petra, the answer is at high level, it's up to you. More practically, Feed Forward should be a natural part of your language. Every time my son falls and scrapes his knee, or him and my daughter bonk heads and fall down and cry, my inclination is to pick them up and say, you're okay. How much different of a response will I get when I say, this happens sometimes. What could I do to help you feel more comfortable now? I don't need a coach to sit there. How much better would my interaction with my wife last night have been if instead of saying, I bet that I know the right answer because I read a book or I had an experience or I heard someone talk about this, if I had just said, honey, what's the right answer here? I can even be self-deprecating. Sweetheart, you married a bozo. That's on you. Why don't you help that bozo do the right thing tonight? You ask the question. Does the coach need to be there? Maybe at the beginning. If anything, I think we train people to just ask. I give people very specific ways to ask. And in fact, Laura, I don't know if I taught a 2-hour masterclass on advanced feed forward techniques. Is that something that's public and people can look up, or is that something people should? Okay, excellent. So write Feed Forward in the chat. If we can, I taught a 2-hour masterclass giving phrases and situations and scenarios for collecting and receiving Feed Forward well, how to say thank you, how to extrapolate, extract, and clarify. So write Feed Forward and maybe we can distribute that. So is the coach in the meeting? If you need to, I recommend training a leader, doing behavioral role plays and coaching, and then start with the people who are going to be the best recipients of the question to build their reps to the people who they may have a harder time with. Right? And keep in mind that the value of Feed Forward is different depending on the individual. Let me give you another real life example. If I were to say, I want to be a better father, guess who's got the loudest, most important voice? My son and my daughter. Are they the only people with an important voice? How about my spouse? Pretty important voice. How about their grandparents? That's a pretty important voice. How about their teachers? There's a lot of important voices here. Whose is most important? It's the kids. If I need to be a better delegator as a leader, there is someone on my team who thinks I'm better as a delegator than all the others. And there's someone on my team who thinks I'm worse. There's someone who's most informed on how I can actually improve functionally. And there's people who have the least information on how to functionally improve, but have just as valid an opinion on how I change their perception. Right? So this can be very simple. It can also be deeply, deeply nuanced. Good. Let's see. Thank you for the question. And of course, please let me know, Petra, let me know if I've answered that question fully. So this is Feed Forward. And I want you to know, I want you to recognize you don't need info on my past. If you do, it's more informed. Doesn't mean that it's necessary. Nothing you say about what I could do next time is going to offend me. Nothing is going to be likely to knock me off my game and get me to boo-hoo about things. That's why this feed forward thing is so important. So if we can share that masterclass, we will. It is one of my favorites, and I think it is something that should be taught as early as high school. But that's, again, a story for another time. Or with Bill Summers right here, at least in the middle of my screen. Someone earlier asked about education, how this works in higher education. Drop a note in the chat to connect with at William. Okay, I just put him in the chat. Bill, someone was asking about education, how this works in higher education, and I told him to get in touch with you because you have the knowledge. Good to see you, my friend. Okay, action planning with feed forward. So what is this? We get these suggestions from people, and I just have a list from you just now. And what I'm going to do is action plan using that feed forward, not a textbook, not a conference, not a webinar, a workshop, a culture statement, a value statement, an organizational protocol book, none of that. Action planning using feed forward revolutionizes how we translate insight into action. What sets this apart is its absolute unique reliance on stakeholder suggestions rather than the leader's expertise. The reason that most coaching fails, I teach this in another masterclass. The reason that most coaching fails is it makes the coach the center of gravity. The coach is the one with the answers. The coach is the one that solves the problems. The coach is the one who decides and dictates what success is. Well, who wouldn't want to be a coach? Look how important I am. Feed forward says, actually, my opinion is not so important. In fact, I don't have the answers. The answers are all around you. I'm just going to denoise. I'm going to interrupt the noise so that you get more signal on what you can actually work on. Now, this is a distinct approach. And I could argue that this has significantly contributed to the success of many of our coaches, but I want to make that case. Why? The first reason this is so revolutionary is it provides the shorter and shortest path to victory. How? It reverse engineers growth. We start by asking stakeholders what new behaviors should replace the old ones. In other words, my friends, they give you the rubric. They give you the grading scale. You know exactly how you will be judged. You know what to do and in which priority. This is the straightest, most linear path, the most painless path to victory that we could possibly offer our clients. Number two, this was a big one for me starting out, is it removed the burden of expertise from me, the coach. No longer, for the first time, I no longer needed to feel like I had all of the answers. My role becomes one of a facilitator rather than the all-knowing expert. By capitalizing on the momentum from the wisdom of stakeholders, we're able to magnify our effectiveness as coaches by focusing on our facilitation skills rather than exhaustive subject matter expertise. How many coaches have you run into? Thank you, Aaron. This is truly, when I started, Aaron, as a coach, I was in my 20s. I had a degree in guitar performance. I had no business experience. No leader in their right mind on the planet would hire me to tell them how to run their business. Because I don't have the expertise or the experience. And Marshall introduced me to what he called the Marshall and me approach. He said, stop selling yourself. You're not the star of the show. The process is. If you need a star, use my name and then piggyback on the rest. What does that look like, Marshall? Well, tell your clients. Me and Marshall, we work in the world's largest executive coaching network. We've coached 1 in 3 of the Fortune 500 CEOs. We've got 5,000 coaches in 110 countries, coaching in 65 languages. Here's some of the clients that have used our process. Here's some of the research that shows the results are actually very similar, regardless of your situation, industry. This doesn't kind of work or sort of work or sometimes work or work there, but not here. This works every time, everywhere, as long as you follow the process. If you want to work with Marshall, he's about $1 million for 12 months. If you've got a smaller budget, I'm right here. Oh, I only needed it to work once. It's a bit of a Hail Mary. I only needed it to work once. Since then, I've gotten 2 master's degrees, a PhD, and several other professional certifications. And guess what? Me and Marshall still coach in the world's largest network. I don't need to have my own brand at this point. I can if I choose to. But this removing the burden from the coach is just astronomical because I don't have to be thinking about the next smart thing I'm going to say to sell another few coaching hours. I get to be fully present and I know what is it that's important to stakeholders. And is what you're telling me you did this week in alignment or out of alignment? That's it. I'm a glorified mechanic at this point. I can't tell you how big this is. Good. Bonita said, this is great because the focus is relevant within the context of the environment. Yeah. Boy, do we make the mistake of saying, I did all this research with 100,000 leaders and it turns out these are the important skills. No. Because the first thing your client's going to say, but can we get a breakout of just people in the automotive industry? Can we get a breakout just of female leaders working in Northeast Asia? No. We are immediately skeptical of this. Diana said, Brandon, how do we or can we constructive feed forward insights versus personal vendettas or political insights? Curious, sadly, I don't see every feed forward insight is genuine, meant to be helpful. Do you agree? Yeah, totally. So Diana's bringing up the problem that you may ask for feed forward and get something different. Guess what? You should absolutely expect that. Not only might that happen, that is going to happen. And this is where so much of the coach's creativity comes to play. The leader's job isn't to process it. The leader's job is to collect it. The leader then sits with the coach and says, what do we want to do about this? There's no coercion. There's no forcefulness. There's no, you have to do what I'm telling you. A coach wrote to me today, how do I get the leader to do the things I'm telling them? So what are you telling them? Do this behavior, this behavior. Trust me, I'm the expert. Clearly you're the expert. How is that going for you? How's that going for your client? No, the leader collects it. Your job is to help process it. And over time, your job is to teach them to process it. Because after 12 months, this is a funny thing I've unfortunately learned recently, was when you finish with your CPA, they say, we'll see you next year. When you finish with your attorney, they say, I hope you never see me again. As a coach, I'm more on the, I hope you never have to see me again. I hope I'm not your coach again. I hope that we can be friends now and I can become the coach for someone else. Unbelievable. I'm so passionate about this. I hope this is as fun for you as it is for me. Finally, this entire activity of action planning based on feed forward makes commitment to the goal much easier for the leader. Oh, what a gift to give your client to make this easier. Why? Because an I don't know if you guys know this. This might be a secret. Come on, we'll tell you about this. Executives have a pretty stressful life. There's a lot of complexities and there's a lot of high stakes. They lead a lot of meetings and a lot of teams, and the last thing they want is to sit down for an hour out of their day or whatever, however coaches are working, and say, so what do you want to talk about? What's going on this week? Why don't you think back to what's caused pain? You want me to tell you what to do about it? No. Hey, remind me, 6 months ago when we started working together, what was the goal you picked? Clear, concise communication. Excellent. What happened last week? What were you intending to do? What actually occurred? What did we learn from that? What do we want to do different next week? Click. This is a 15-minute coaching call once a week. Very simple. I know coaches who do an hour a week or a couple hours once a month. There's no right or wrong. There's just, what do the stakeholders? I would put this into 3 questions, actually. I'm still workshopping this, but I'll give this to you as an early coaching as a broad service, in my opinion, is 3 things: feedback, feed forward, and follow up. That's it. What do you think of me as a leader? How can I improve that perception? Hey, what have you noticed I've been working on? That's it. That's it. And after 12 months, I want to leave and have the full confidence that the leader's able to do that themselves. And I'm so confident in it that I have started ending my engagements by scheduling a 6-month mini survey to automatically go out. 6 months later, after we finish coaching, I want to know, have these habits continued? And fortunately, it's a small sample, but I think I'm up to 12 or so. Every one of them has been good. I'll tell you what, my heart is pounding when I launched that mini survey, because it is just as likely they have gone exactly the wrong direction. And when they have, my question is, how can I help you get back on track? When they've done overwhelmingly well, my question is, who's next? This is not just coaching. This is not just leadership. This is business development. This is big stuff. Good. Good. So Diana, again, I'm gonna park this question because it's important, but I want to talk about what to do when that comes up. Christopher, from neuroscience, we know we are the architects of our own experience, which means our self-image is a mental construct, which of course has a huge impact on how I perceive myself. What is your comment on that? We also have an inner critic. Christopher, I'm going to give perhaps an unsatisfying answer to say I'm not a neuroscientist. I can't say I'm qualified. What I can say is that of all the leaders I've met, not a single time have I seen on their job description, you need to have a very, very positive, constructive self-view. And if you don't, I don't think we can hire you. I don't think we can continue to employ you. I think that that is something that is an expectation you bring to work. And my focus, personally, my focus is not in helping people to view themselves better. However, 2 caveats. 1, there are coaches like Susie Burke who are masterful at this, and they use stakeholder centered coaching as well. So this can be purposed in many different ways. You can work on perception and behavior at the same time. You can work on perception, behavior, and self-reflection at the same time. Caveat number 2 is stakeholder-centered coaching is actually designed to address this, because most coaching is inside out. If you align your values with if you understand your values and you know your true self and you can show up more authentically, you're going to be a good leader. Is the problem with the world right now that we are waking up? Everyone here knows a bad leader, whether that we can say political. There's nobody on the planet who can't think of someone that they would call a bad leader in the political space. And I can promise you, not a single one of us woke up today thinking, oh, if only that person was more authentic, my life would be better. No one is waking up with a bad leader thinking, oh God, I have to go to work today. Oh, I really hope that Brandon lives his values at work. No, they're saying, I hope this person's not a jerk to me. I hope this person lets me do my best work. I hope this person creates the necessary conditions for my success. They are not waking up saying, oh, I hope Brandon's inner critic is positive today. Here's how stakeholder-centered coaching addresses that. As I was mentioning earlier, the biggest antidote, the strongest antidote to imposter syndrome is to build yourself a mountain of credible evidence that says you can do what you say you can do. You are outsourcing that confidence to empirical evidence. That is a non-trivial prescription, friends. Why is that so important? Because it's how we learn most things. When we're learning art appreciation, there's a lot of internal alignment. There's a lot of subjectivity. When we learn, I don't know, interior design or decoration or music, there's so interpretive dance, there's so much internalization that's necessary for that. When you learn algebra, 2 + 2 = 4, regardless of how you care about it. It's either right or it's wrong. It's binary. And here's what's crazy. We don't learn math by getting the answers right. We learn by getting them wrong. And we don't have to internalize algebra or geography or geology or history. This is, we don't have to internalize the theory of gravity. It doesn't care if you agree. It is what it is. So stakeholder centered coaching is distinctly outside in, because where something like cognitive behavioral therapy would say, let's change the framing of this so that you can affect the trigger, feeling, and behavior, we go the opposite way around. Why don't you do this successful behavior? Write 2 + 2 = 4 on your test, then get the sticker that says good job, and then watch what happens to your inner critic. Now repeat that for 12 years. Now extend that into college. When we go through college and wind up with a maths degree, not a single one of us wakes up with imposter syndrome thinking, I might not be that good at maths. That's what this is. As a leader, let's park your emotions for just 6 to 12 months. If you can, just tolerate the inner critic and watch what happens when you build success on top of success in a way that everybody around you not just notices, but acknowledges you, validates that effort and that achievement. Ooh, I'm getting goosebumps. This is an outside-in approach. Most coaching is inside out. If you're a trained psychologist like Susie Burke or Dr. John Reed, you're going to integrate inside out and outside in. Excellent. It's not what I do. It's not what stakeholder centered coaching was designed for, but this is just a corporate application of a very human experience. You want to be a better husband? Ask your wife what she will notice is different when you're better. Do that thing. Ask if she noticed and what's next. You want to be a better parent. You want to be a better teacher. You want to be a better principal. You want to be a better coworker, a better neighbor. Pick your poison. You want to improve in the eyes of somebody? Ask them what success looks like, deliver, and then check in. Ooh. Is your self-worth stronger than your self? Bill, I love it. I love it. Great question, William, and it requires a long answer. Yeah, Christopher, let me just check in. Did I address that fully? I want to make sure that I've not cut any corners or misrepresented any cheat points. Good. Petra said, many leaders are guarded and feel uncomfortable asking questions, especially their direct reports. How do you convince them? Good. Or are we talking about, we're talking about everybody, systemic lens active. Good. Keep your lens active. The feed forward, let me come back and say, stakeholder centered coaching is a structured application of a very human experience. So from the normal human experience, Petra, feed forward should be with everyone, everywhere, all the time. All the time. I mean, we were having a party and I went to go pick up some food and I know I'm ordering for 100 people. I can just start rattling this off, or I can say, hey, I've got 100 orders here. What's the best way to give this to you? That's feed forward right there. In the corporate world, here's how you also follow up, because you're going to see that person the next day and the next day and the next day. Good. So how do we get people to ask those questions? Let's keep that on the list. I understand Petra is more about 360-degree feed forward. Yes, thank you. Immaculada. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry for butchering your name. Laura, I suspect you'll teach me how to say that correctly later. Diana said, sorry, Brandon, I do wake up every morning and hope that the person is no longer our leader. Oh, Diana, if only stakeholder-centered coaching was a replacement strategy like Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Unfortunately, that's not it. But Diana, I come back to the question, what would make working with that leader better for you? And I think to the earlier point, the question is, you're waking up hoping that that leader is no longer the leader. I don't suppose that you're waking up wishing that that person lived more authentically. I don't suppose that when you think about the frustration this leader's caused in your life, you're thinking, oh boy, I just really wish their personal values would come more to life. I wish that they would do this thing or that they would stop doing this thing. And that was where a lot of this started. When Marshall was doing trainings and custom 360s, a CEO walked into the room and said, boy, I've got this young, talented, brilliant, smart, innovative guy who's a jerk, know-it-all steamroller, and he'd be worth $1 million to me if he was better. If he stopped doing this one thing. And Marshall slipped into Charlie Brown mode and heard, $1 million. And he said, I'll do it. And the CEO said, you're crazy. It's not going to work. I said, if it doesn't work, don't pay me. That's where this all started, by serendipity. Just bananas. Good. So this commitment makes things easier for the leader. Let's get back into this. The reason that this becomes easier for the leader, you are not telling them what to do. You are leveraging the voices of the people who contribute to that leader's business success. You are not prescribing the advice. You're saying these people will judge you by these exact standards they just described to you. What would you like to do about it? And when you phrase it this way, there's such little room for pushback that most of my job as a coach is just directing the momentum, like Tai Chi. I'm not creating the momentum, I'm just directing it. In other words, when they commit at step 1, areas of pushback by step 5 are almost entirely negated. Good. So how does this all work? After announcing the goal and getting buy-in from the stakeholders, they're going to give you suggestions. From these suggestions, this whole list, the leader is going to whittle down to pick the areas they are willing to action. You don't have to do them all. You're not promising to do them all. What is the leader willing to do about this? The leader and the coach review the most impactful actions and then pick. And that's the beauty. The leader gets to pick what they're going to do. There is no coercion. Stakeholders make the suggestion. The leader picks which suggestion to work on. The coach uses some smart questions to guide the process. I've got a very detailed flowchart I made 10 years ago that still works today that I share in our sessions. But going through this is essentially, is this suggestion behavioral? Is it constructive? Is it visible and observable that others can witness? And is it concise? You don't want a long behavior. You want something short you can repeat. When it hits these goals, that goes on the action plan, which is then shared with the stakeholders as a way to say, here's the new brand and you can expect moving forward. Okay, so we've picked a goal, we've enrolled the stakeholders, and we've shared our action plan. Here is where a lot of the coaching, actually, the magic of coaching takes place. Everything up to now has been strategy and setup. Now we're going to get elbows deep in implementation. So we've got 7 steps here. Again, this will come to you by email. So listen carefully and just try to remember what we go through, because this is where the magic happens. Step 1, ask. Ask for feedforward on how to get better. It sounds like this. Bonita, I want to be a more effective delegator. What would you notice if that happened? How do we get back to my slides? I seem to have moved you all. Apologies for that. Good. So I'm going to start with feedforward by saying, what does success actually look like in this situation? What would you notice was different? Step 2 is I'm going to listen. Fight the urge to respond and just listen. They're giving me a gift. I should shut up and accept the gift. Step 3, there's only one response to a gift. What did our parents teach us to say? Thank you. Not thanks, but that's not my favorite color. Did they teach us to evaluate the gift giver? Thanks, but you don't know what you're talking about. I've tried that before. No, just say thank you, show some respect, and thank the gift. Number 4 is think. Take those of you who are particularly savvy learners will notice that our first principle of stakeholder centered coaching has been fulfilled. Involve stakeholders. Place attention and focus on stakeholders. Ask, listen, thank. Now I'm going to emphasize the value of that feed forward by thinking with the coach about what I'm going to do about this. I'm going to go through and pick out what I'm willing to do as a result of the suggestions, build an action plan from it, and then respond to the stakeholders by sharing the action plan. Let stakeholders take an active role. I can say, look, I've dropped the ball on this in the past. I might go to someone and say, I have a problem interrupting people in meetings. Before we go into this meeting, Albert, would you be willing to just count the number of times you notice me interrupt? At the end of the meeting, you can give me that number, and I'll check in every week just to see if I'm moving that number down. I want to give my stakeholders an active role in my development. I'm inviting them to do what they're doing already, which is judge. I wouldn't advise this, but just as a hyperbole for illustration, I could say, Diana, I know you wish I wasn't the leader. I know you think I got this job and I'm not actually qualified for it. Now, I can't change the fact that this is the job I was given. I can change what I do with it. You've said that I interrupt too often. Could I ask, I already know that you notice this. Could I just ask that at the end of the meeting, you tell me just how much you noticed it, and I'll work to make it so that way you can't find any during our meetings. I want to take the momentum that's already there and pulling in the wrong direction and just say, would you be on my team by telling me just how bad you're seeing things? Okay, this is a bit more advanced for sticky situations. We cover this kind of thing in office hours for our certified coaches, but the punchline is give people an active stake in your development. Step 6 is to do what you've promised, do the work. And then finally, to follow up with people. Go back each month and say, I'm working on clear, concise communication. What have you noticed in the past 30 days? And do you have any suggestions for the next 30 days? This is reinforcing my commitment to the action plan. So I'm going to ask how to get better. I'm going to listen and take notes. I'm going to say thank you, think about the suggestions and build an action plan that is shared, and then do the work to change, and then follow up to see if any actual change has taken place. These are what I call the stakeholder-centered habits. Earlier, we said, does the leader need to be present for feedforward meetings? No, that should happen in the hallway. That should happen at the water cooler. That should happen while you're waiting for the meeting to start, right? Hey, Christopher, before we start this meeting, have you noticed anything about my delegation in the last 30 days that you'd like to share with me? Here's my action plan. Was there anything that you'd add, subtract, or modify? I'm just going to become obnoxious about telling people, here's what I'm working on. What are you seeing? What are you seeing? What are you seeing? And then we get to the last step, and that is measuring change, measuring changes in perception. Every 3 to 6 months, the certified coach will deploy what I would consider the most powerful tool in coaching. It is an instrument that's finely tuned to detect perceptions and changes in perceptions, and that's called the mini survey. If you're familiar with Marshall's pay for results model, this is what drives that. This is what makes it possible. Why is it useful? The survey is fast and light. It takes just about 3 to 4 minutes to complete. It asks the most important question. So those of you who want to make your own version, this is it. What changes in leadership effectiveness have you seen in the past N months? We generally ask over 6 months. We ask it on a -3 to +3 scale, where -3 is much less effective and +3 is much more. It is just I mean, to me, this is an amazing process. It's amazing because it's simple, it's focused, and it's reliable. I mean, the simplicity of giving stakeholders a vote with one click to validate the efforts of the leader creates deep alignment with everybody. It's focused. Now, as coaches, I know we love leadership analytics. I've never had a coach say every coach I've spoken to says having a rich 360 assessment makes the coaching better. Okay, for whom? What's the marginal benefit of deep, robust 360 in terms of the outcomes of the coaching? That's not what organizations are so impressed with. And by the way, stakeholders don't generally like to do hundreds and hundreds of question 360s every so often when someone's getting coached. Now, for me, the most interesting benefit, and I suspect this would be true for many of you, is it gives the coach a reliable benchmark for performance. You have a reliable and steady benchmark for performance. That means not only do I have tangible impact in this engagement, I also have data, stable data, on how this engagement compares relative to my others. I'm able to compare over time my impact as a coach. And if you're like me and you're constantly learning and integrating new techniques, these measures help you understand what is the marginal value, what is the marginal ROI on your investment in self-improvement, what's the marginal ROI of using these tools. And by the way, I'm not the only one looking at these benchmarks. Let me ask, when you think back, when you were competing with other coaches for an engagement, how many of them do you think are able to tangibly demonstrate their impact, have shown what they've done with previous clients? Ladies and gentlemen, your biggest competition is a client list with a sheet full of testimonials that say, oh boy, 6 months working with Brandon was so impactful, I felt like a completely different leader. What a breath of fresh air when you're actually able to say, hey, I've worked with 15 leaders in the past 24 months. Here's what each of them were working on. Here's what each of their stakeholders noticed and the degree of improvements that they recognized. Here's the qualitative story of what they saw happening at the beginning, at 6 months, at 12 months. Here's the feedback from stakeholders. Here's the leader's story. Here's their reflections that have been captured through our coaching sessions. And by the way, if you still need a client list, if you still want a list of testimonials, I've got those too. No, that's not good enough if you're a professional. These mini surveys are the evidence that you are the professional you say you are. These mini surveys speak on your behalf and give you instant credibility without having to wave around some stale old testimonials about how my clients felt about me or my services. Remember, as a coach, your job isn't to measure success. Your job is to create it. It is your professional duty to measure it. And in doing so, you become a real professional and you can discard the emotional roller coaster of client acquisition. Respectfully and totally disagree about 360 provides valuable. Correct. I will not say it does not provide valuable information. I think my curiosity is, what is the marginal impact of the 360? Does it give the coach a more robust view? Sure. Is that view leverageable? Scientifically impossible, but if I took a leader and I was able to duplicate them, and I was able to coach one of them without feedback, without deep qualitative or structured feedback, and I were to coach them again without that, what is the numeric difference going to show up in terms of how people have perceived this leader? I haven't seen anything compelling to suggest that it is, but I also want to say I'm not here to convince anyone to not use feedback. I use feedback and it's a very valuable tool. I also think it's very conceivable that we can achieve comparable results with a radical reduction in discomfort, because a 360 is one of the hardest parts to sell of coaching. It's one of the hardest parts to buy in coaching. It's one of the hardest things to get buy-in from stakeholders and from leaders on. It's one of the most complex pieces of data processing and holding for organizations. What if we were able to do it without it? Oh, thank you. It was good to see you too. Please feel free to come back and jam with this. My goal is never to be right. My goal is minimally to be interestingly wrong and to get us to think more deeply about the things we're doing. Good. So again, your job as a coach isn't to measure the success. Your job is to create the success. It is your duty to measure it. Good. If you have to take off, it was lovely to see you. We'll make sure that you get all of this. But if those of you who haven't jumped off yet, I want to give you a quick offer. Because as we've said, we're going to send out all this information in a gift book, and we'll send it to each one of you. Given the interest that we've seen, I want to go a step further, especially for those of you who haven't yet taken advantage of the introductory course, which we're providing 100% for free for a limited time. This is useful for anyone who wants to go deeper on this stuff, but maybe isn't ready for a full training. So Laura, if you can scribble this down also, just so people have this in the chat. Let's say if you just want the ebook, put A in the chat. If you'd like the ebook and access to the free course, put B. And Laura, if you're okay with this, I'll also say, if anyone wants the course, the book, and a one-on-one call to discuss what this actually looks like in your unique use case, your industry, your geography, if you want to get connected to other certified coaches in your industry or region, get specific resources, you can put C. And Laura, you can follow up and share this as needed. The good news is that after today, each and every one of you can use everything that we've discussed, including the tool to measure your impact. You have the question right here. You've got the scaling down here. You can use this free anytime you like. We will be sharing this thank you, Laura, in the email shortly. So let me jump into the research, because this is everything I've said is it's a reach of a claim. And I would never want to be seen as taking a claim that can't be fully and empirically backed up. We did a study titled Leadership as a Contact Sport. In this study, this is one of the main studies of about 7 or so that we've done over the past 20 years that have been replicated. Various ones have been replicated, peer-reviewed, and many other tests for rigor. This is I think someone just drew on my screen. How funny. Well, we'll leave it there. This is the prime study that has been replicated, started with, we've got this here. It started with about 11,000 leaders, 6 continents, and 86,000 stakeholders. Everyone did the same thing. They went to the same program. They collected some feedback. They picked a goal, asked for suggestions to make an action plan, and were instructed to engage their stakeholders. After 1 year and 86,000 mini surveys later, we assessed how the follow-up behaviors influenced perceived changes in leadership effectiveness. Now, the findings, are you ready? Are compelling, but entirely unsurprising. As it turns out, leaders who actively engage in regular follow-up experienced substantial improvements in their leadership effectiveness. And those who neglected follow-up not only saw no improvements, but they were often seen as less effective than before. So let's look at what the data actually show. And I'm going to clear that drawing because it doesn't seem like it's going to go away. There we go. Okay. This is the no follow-up group. Ooh. At worst, these leaders were seen as less effective. At best, they were most of these are clustered around our 0. So at best, they were seen as marginally more effective. At worst, they were seen as less effective. As it turns out, ladies and gentlemen, there is nowhere in the world where people like it when you ask for their opinions and then ignore them. These leaders would have been seen as more... The likelihood of these leaders being perceived as more effective, statistically, is lower than chance. Meaning if you flip a coin and it says effective or not effective, that is not even a good enough predictor of how they've actually done. Bizarrely, these leaders would be equally improved if they had stayed home eating Cheetos on the couch. Now, this is not a glowing endorsement for Cheetos. It's an endorsement for follow-up. In fact, even small amounts of follow-up have a marked change in leadership effectiveness. You ready for the big one? Here's what consistent follow-up looks like. Leaders who consistently engaged in follow-up were overwhelmingly seen as more effective. Now, here's what's wild. This is not a coached group. This is not a group of people who worked with a coach. These are people who learned the process and self-applied. When you add a coach to the mix, that number goes up to 100%. Take that with a grain of salt. When we look at our data set of mini surveys that have gone out to leaders at 6, 9, and 12 months, leaders that consistently follow up are working with a coach are never seen as less effective. These numbers have been borne out with 86,000 respondents. We replicated it again with 250,000 respondents. It's been replicated inside GE under Jack Welch, led by Dr. Linda Sharkey, who's one of our coaches. 200 or so leaders, same results. I've replicated this in 34 different countries, same results. Here's all 3. This stuff doesn't kind of work or sort of work or maybe work or sometimes work. This works every time. And what is surprising is that when leaders do the work and follow up, they are consistently perceived as more effective. But regardless of whether they did the work, they could have bled and sweat and cried for the work. If they didn't follow up, they were ineffective at best, and at worst have done some serious reputational harm. This, my friends, is the war we are waging and the tools we are up against it with. So think about the value add that you bring to your clients. How much structured follow-up are you ensuring in your own coaching? We know that follow-up is the key. There is nothing in the coaching literature that has such strong predictive power over the outcomes. The only thing that comes remotely close in the literature is some people call it trust, some people call it rapport, some people call it the satisfaction between the relationship of the coach and leader. But even that's not strong enough of a predictor, because the people who tanked it really tended to really like their coach. So how much structured follow-up are you ensuring in your own coaching? And how impactful would it be for you to have a structured follow-up process like this? This research underscores the critical role of stakeholders and follow-up in creating effective leaders. It suggests a very potent relationship between stakeholder engagement and improved organizational performance, emphasizing the importance of regular, continuous, active engagement and feedback and feed forward with stakeholders. And that is precisely what Stakeholder Centered Coaching offers. So I'm going to pull up this summary slide of the key things that we talked about, but I know that there are some important questions that we've not yet addressed. So what I'm going to do is invite anyone who'd like to stick around, because I'm not done until we're done. So I'm going to start going through these questions. Good. Bonita said, this is why many employees get disgruntled with surveys because people ask their opinion with no change. It's so true. And it is so shocking to these individuals when you say, I care about your opinion and I'm going to do something about it. Feedback, feed forward, follow up. What do you think of me as a leader? What should I be? How could I improve that? And what have you noticed? What can I do different? 3 questions. That's it. Good. Because of the mix up with Mary's at the beginning, will you distinguish guests who are responding? We're not sure. So if you have your name as guest, please make that change. You can go to the top right of your video feed. You'll see 3 dots. If you click that, you'll see something below that says rename. Good. Now my team has been so sweet to put all these questions, starting with Chantal. Is Chantal still with us? Are these comments slide will be available to us? Diana, very quickly, because I know you're on your way out. Yes, the slides and everything we'll send to you. The comments, these comments slide. The slides will, the comments are, the chat box is not. And I look to receive, yeah, perfect. You'll get, and maybe D. Okay. We have to come up with a D now, Diana. Okay. Diana, I'm going to continue with a question that you asked, but feel free to jump off. Diana said, doesn't this mean our testimonials should elevate the perception of us? So why do potential clients never look at testimonials that can upgrade perceptions? I can hypothesize on this. I can't say I have the answer. What I can say is that testimonials are a story. Testimonials are a recollection of an experience. And something happened in the mid-2000s that made consumers in general very skeptical of testimonials. They're telling a story. I didn't sign up to read this story. I've got a lot of work to do today, and I have to meet with a lot of coaches. Why am I going to read every single one of their story? There's no relevance to it. And even if this person is my age, is my industry, is my organizational level, I still have a great deal of skepticism because you've started with a story. What shifts the dialogue is to start with the outcome. What most coaches do is they walk into a client and they say, oh, well, I do this kind of coaching and work with these kinds of leaders. And I. Ooh. Here's some stories about me. Would you like to read them? No, thanks. I've had my fill of you. What changes things is when you go in and someone says, what do you do? And you respond with, well, the clients that get the best working with me are ... You notice, number 1, I'm talking about them. Number 2, I'm talking about people who they want to be like. People who get the best from their coach. So now I've got their attention. Clients who work with me and get the best, people who get the best working with me are people who ... And now I'm telling them, so they're listening. People who want guaranteed behavioral change in 12 months or less. And now they can quickly decide, is this relevant or not? I might say people who get the best working with me are those who want to be recognized and acknowledged as measurably more effective by key people in their team. Now I've got their attention. These are audacious claims. And everybody else going into your sessions is starting off with me. Here's my bio. Here's my client list. Here's the testimonials. Forget all of that. The clients that get the best with me, they are senior executives. They have a great, let's say, a broad scope and extremely high stakes. And they're dealing with a behavior that, boy, if they could just snap their fingers and solve it, they would. I work with them to make it as simple as possible. And I tend to be, I measure the results and I tend to be very effective. Now, the story is answering a question, not making an argument. The argument is made. I'm very effective. Would you like the supporting information? I could say leaders that get the best working with me are focused on delegation. Here's the last 6 clients. But hey, if delegation isn't your thing, here's some of the other things I've worked on. What's your focus? And they tell me, and I say, here's someone I worked with just like that. Here's someone I worked with a similar goal. Maybe there's no correlation in my previous work whatsoever, but I can say, I know Bonita, she's worked with a person. I know Albert, Bonita, and we work in the world's largest executive coach network. Here's some of our clients. And now we're all doing the same thing. How simple is this? When we use testimonials to make an argument, they're going to fall flat. Or I should say it's a coin toss on whether you're going to stick the landing, because it's an argument wrapped in a story that they don't want to read. Make it more simple. Leaders that work with me, they want coaching to be ruthlessly simple. They don't want to have to worry about what's the right thing to do. In fact, they generally are really skillful functionally, and they kind of just want to put leadership on autopilot, knowing that they're going to fulfill their goals. People who work with me tend to externalize leadership and play it like they play their function. They set a goal, they measure their success, and then they keep on improving. Now, that's not what everyone's looking for in coaching. So let's talk about you, dear leader. What are you looking for? Interesting. Here's the story of Craig. Craig and I worked on a goal just like that. And now Craig's story has relevance. So Diana, that was one of your questions. And I think that was the last pending one of yours. Feel free to let me know if I've fully answered that. And anyone else, feel free to push back or agree. Thank you, Bonita. It was lovely to have you. Let's see. Love your comment about starting with the outcomes. It's hard for those of us who grew up. Humility is the better part of valor. Diana, if you really want to get Marshall going, like just really fired up, he'll talk about how females tend to be a bigger victim of this exact humility is the better part of valor. That he tends to recognize females tend to struggle more with self-promotion than their counterparts. If you've done something great, people need to know about it. And if you're not comfortable saying it, write it down and find a way for them to read it. Get somebody else to say it. That's a really, really hard thing to do. Diana, what worked for me, and my goodness, this was probably back in middle school or high school when I was preparing to interview for my first job. And someone said, negotiate like you're negotiating for your best friend. I thought, I'm a hype man. I can do that. I can hype someone up. Maybe I just point that at me. Oops, so bad for me. Yeah, so Diana, if you'd like some specific advice, I recommend checking with Diana. She's with Laura. She's exceptional at this stuff. Females of a certain age are victims of this mantra. The first time I saw Marshall do ad hoc coaching, I was directing a day of filming. And he was interviewing someone that I deeply respect as one of the best managers I ever worked with. And we have a full day of filming. Before we could click record, he said, all right, how do you want me to how do you want me to introduce you? And she said, oh, no, it's fine. Let's just focus on you. Stop, kill the cameras, everyone out. Brandon, you stay here. And then he just sat there and laid into it. What on earth makes you think that you haven't done something worth noting? And by the way, if you've done nothing worth noting, why would I be sitting across the chair from you, letting you interview me? He said, you pretending to be a nobody is against both of our interests, and it's against the interest of the audience. Nobody wins here. I thought, oh my goodness, how many people need this message right here? How many people need this message? I needed it. It was big. Thank you so much. This is the first session. Your organization is incredibly insightful. Thank you, Zuleika. I hope that we get to see you again in a future one, and make sure that you've coordinated with Laura as you see fit. Okay, other questions? Albert, let me actually turn to you before I go to the pending questions, since you're here and I have you as a captive audience. Is anything resonating with you, or is anything creating curiosity for you, Albert? Oh, and by the way, the mime competition is down the hall. We don't do lip reading here. We got to use that mute button. I've tried lip reading. I'm just not to that level yet. Good. Thank you, Philemon. Oh, it's good to see you. Long time no see.
Is this better?
Yes, we hear you now.
You have to repeat the question because I'm a little bit confused to what happened.
Yeah. Any questions that you have that I could respond to? Just you're here, you're on camera. I'll give you first question.
All right. I've worked with the list of habits
Mhm.
of Marshall. I guess you know what I mean. That they say different things without being aware what the impact of it is.
Mhm.
Um, I've worked with people and asked them to look at it and if they recognized it and so forth. Although it was very clear, they struggled with owning it.
Mhm.
And today, I think I probably was too direct. But what would you say of it? How would you work on that they can own it?
Mhm.
That's their behavior.
I have, and Laura, maybe you can find this. I think it's an article called Regress to Progress. And getting someone to own something, thank you, Laura, if we'll put that in the chat. Regress is if I want to do a 500-pound back squat, but it's too heavy, I'm going to start with just the bar. And if that's too heavy, I'm just going to do body weight. And if that's too heavy, I'm going to lean against a wall. And if I can't go down and back up, I'll sit in a chair and stand up. And if I can't do that, I'm just going to keep making it easier until there's zero chance of failure. One of my friends, Julian Farapeda, down in Brazil, with whom I meet regularly with Susie Burke from earlier, he asks a question anytime a leader makes a commitment. On a 1 to 10 scale, how confident are you in getting that task done, in achieving that goal? And if it's ever less than a 10, he regresses. Oh, 9. Good. Let's make it simpler until we're at a 10. And then lets them go. And then the next week dials up just a little bit, crank the knob. And they just keep doing that until you reach a point that you say, this is what ownership looks like. So my suggestion is anytime you're working with a client and they're struggling to own it, don't make them own it. Do something simpler.
Right.
Case in point, I keep pointing at my kids. Maybe there's some trauma I need to talk to my therapist about. But when I asked my 4-year-old daughter, it's time to clean up after we've played with our toys. I just leave her there for a few minutes, come back, it's still a mess. Well, a few rounds of this, and I realize she doesn't even know how to clean. I thought this was something mommy's the expert here. So, maybe this is something we need some help on. So, mommy, can you come teach me and my daughter Jane how to clean the room? What's the home for things? And I say, she's not going to clean her room. She's going to learn to clean her room. Once she's done that, now I can supervise while she's cleaning. Now next time is semi-supervision. Next time is dual checkpoints. I'll come in halfway. I'll come in at the end. Next time I'll check at the end. Next time I can trust that if you say it's done, it's done. And that may take 10 years, but we're going to regress until I meet you where you're at so that you can take it over and own it. But I'm not going to say, congrats on your first tooth. Here's a steak. Chew it up. I'm going to make it more simple for them.
Good story.
Good. Thank you, Albert. Okay, let me see. Let me move my screen around here. Good. So I've got a few questions, and what I'm going to do is just look to see if the people. Okay, Chantal, you're here. The question was, what if one of the stakeholders is already toxic or difficult with the leader? This is such an important question. So let's come back to the enrollment. Let's get back to the enrollment. So most problems that come up in coaching, I can almost trace directly back to how it was set up. I'm going to come through here. And I can almost always trace them to the enrollment meeting. Well, in this enrollment meeting, I need everyone to commit to support. So I need to explain to them what are their commitments. Again, our training has the templates, demonstrations, practice sessions, etc. So don't think this should just, come instantly. The enrollment commitments for stakeholders is a must. Number one, they agree to tell the truth. Not a big ask. Tell the truth. Don't sugarcoat reality. If I'm doing better, let me know. If I'm not, let me know. Don't wait for me to ask. Tell me in the moment so that I can fix it as quickly as possible. Number two, they agree to I've adjusted my phrasing on this recently. I used to say, let go of the past. And that was not, it's to forgive the past. I'm not going to ask you to just let go. It's not even forgive. Oh my goodness, I'm blanking on this. Frank Wagner took me aside and said, I think you should modify this. It is to look to the future. I'm not going to ask you to forgive the leader. I'm not going to ask you to make excuses for them. I'm not going to ask you to forget what has happened in the past. I am going to ask you to look for evidence that they're trying to change. And if all you find is evidence that they're not, let them know. If you're uncomfortable letting them know, let me know. Just make sure the message gets found. Okay, so they're going to tell the truth. They're going to look to the future. They're going to provide monthly feed forward. So that is an agreement. You will provide future-focused suggestions on how the leader can actually improve, and then watch for them to do it. And number four, they're going to complete a mini survey at the end of the engagement, or at 6 months and at 12 months. So in this agreement, you're already getting the stakeholders to say, I'm willing to participate in this particular way. Now, Chantal, your question is, what if that leader has a toxic relationship with a stakeholder? A, that's going to happen. B, I tend to be drawn to more catastrophic, high stakes situations, because if you've ever watched, say, protests, oh, that's probably not the right term. It is not uncommon, like strikes in organization, especially mid-sized ones, that someone leading a strike has some personal vendetta and has stirred the pot with what other people are actually frustrated about. But really, it's a personal vendetta, and you can quell that strike by appealing to that one individual. Now, I'm not making any commentary on the ethics of this. All I'm saying is that even massive demonstrations can be completely smothered out with very little input of the right thing. If it's someone has hurt me and now I need to hurt them back, sometimes saying I'm sorry from that person completely changes the dynamic. And that's why I'm drawn to these situations. I can create a massive impact in a short time with little effort from the leader. That's my jam. Okay. That doesn't mean it's for everybody. So what do you do when a stakeholder says, I'm willing to participate, but that toxicity shows up in they don't give feed forward, they give judgment, right? Whenever the leader says, how do I do better? They say, well, actually, you suck, and here's the reasons why. Now, what do you do? If you have trained the leader well, stage one analysis is, did they say thank you? Thank you for the input. If that hasn't happened, nothing matters. Get the leader to say thank you. Number two, is there truth to it? Are they just spouting lies about the leader? If that's the case, there's an ethics issue. The first thing we teach in our program is here's where stakeholder-centered coaching will not work. That's the first thing we teach you. Here's where to not use this. A moral or ethical violation is point number one. If someone has an ethical violation, this will just help them to be more unethical faster and more sneakily. If they've got the wrong job, the wrong mission, if they have the wrong talents. We once had somebody call us. It was a chief of medicine at a hospital. I said, we need coaches for our surgeons. What do they need? Well, they're not up to date on the latest surgical procedures and technologies. I said, neither are we. I don't think I can help you. If there's a behavior, I can help you. So what happens when this toxicity shows up as unethical behavior? That's something for the organization to deal with. My contract says I'm not here for ethical or moral failings. What happens more likely, Chantal, is when that stakeholder comes to you after the enrollment meeting and says, hey, Chantal, I'm not quite sure how to say this. but this leader has hurt me. And they've hurt me in a way that I'm not going to participate. I don't want to give them feed forward. I don't want to root for them. I don't think they're going to change, and I don't want to be hurt again. Now what? You've got a few options. The option I tell our coaches, I teach expressly in our program, is when this happens, give me a call. Give me a call. 100% of the cases I have come up against, what has been effective is to say, thank you for your input. Let's you and I go to the sponsor or the manager who has signed off on the goal and stakeholders and explain the situation. If you'd like, I can do that for you. Next step is to tell them at any point, if things change, will you let me know? And by the way, if I think things might have changed, can I check in with you? 100% of the times that this has happened and a stakeholder has opted out at the beginning and said, I've been hurt before, I don't want to be hurt again. And we say, sit on the sidelines and watch. Something strange happens at about the 6-month mark, somewhere between 5 and 7 months. That first mini survey comes in. We get a knock on the door. The stakeholder comes in and says, I never, ever, ever believed that anything was going to change. 6 months in, I'm working with a completely different leader. I want to be a part of this. It never ends up where it begins. Now, the second outcome, I should say 100% of the times it hasn't finished where it has begun. The vast majority of times, someone winds up coming back because they see the leader they see the leader being vulnerable, asking the questions and following up on it. They see the change. There have been some times when this becomes a very self-selecting process. Someone says, I'll give you an example from Chris Coffey. This was the incoming CEO at a Fortune 50, maybe Fortune 10 company. The CEO was new. They had just stepped into the role, had been promoted internally. And their stakeholder was, I think it was the CFO, maybe an EVP in finance. And they came to Chris and said, this guy should never have gotten the job. I don't want to help him. This is stupid. I'm not here to help them. I'm here to do my job. And if that's helping them, I don't want to do it. And Chris Coffey, in his infinite wisdom, leaned in and said, so you don't want to support the new CEO. Would you like to explain that to the board of directors, or would you like me to go and explain that to them? And they said, you know what? I think I'd like to support the CEO. There's cases where 6 months down the road, the person has already been on a slippery banana peel out the door. There's been cases where a person changes teams or gets fired. I have never seen someone opt out of being a stakeholder, which is an option, and then stick around to see the full thing without being involved. So the big answer is to every one of my coaches, if you run into this situation, give me a call. Let's talk it through. I'm going to bring in 5 or 6 other master coaches to solve this. Every month, I open my Zoom room for about 2 to 3 hours for whatever questions people have. There's no agenda. There's no timing. I'm here for whatever you want to jam on. This is the kind of thing we jam on. And you get to hear from other master coaches and advanced coaches at the same time. So, Chantal, the short answer is, you said, do you exclude them? I give everyone an opportunity to exclude themselves. In the enrollment meeting, when I say, here is what it means to commit to support this, they know what that is. If you're not willing to do this, let me know. Everyone's got an opt-out. And then I treat it like sitting in the exit seat. If you've ever sat in the exit seat, it's a bit dehumanizing when the flight attendant comes and, are you prepared to, if this plane is on fire, will you not stand in the way of others? Like, yeah. Was it Mitch Hedberg that said, if you are flammable, you are never blocking a fire exit. If you can catch on fire, you're probably going to move when things get on. So I go through, yes, 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 not a not a yes. I need a yes from you or a no. So good, Chantal. I've said they can opt out. If they want to opt out, I let them. The majority of the time, they come back once they see the leader's serious about this. In other cases where they don't come back, there's typically something with attrition. There's typically, termination or voluntary exit, or perhaps a shift of teams. But I've not seen many cases where stakeholders don't participate and then are able to stick through to the whole thing. So Chantal, I see you're here. Give me some feedback in the chat if I have fully addressed your question, or if there's anything I need to go deeper on. And while we're doing that, Janaki asked, so does that mean leaders do not give feedback about the past? Thank you, Lynn. Lynn, great to see you. Friends, if you're not connected with Lynn Lim, she's doing exceptional work. We're looking at how we can apply stakeholder-centered leadership and stakeholder-centered coaching in parenting, in education, and in parenting twice exceptional children. I have a son who's extremely high IQ and very autistic, and he's brilliant and needs all kinds of help. This is the kind of process. People like that know what they want, and they're very direct about it. So if you teach them it's safe to give that direct feedback, and they feel that it's being accepted and actioned, big things start to happen at home. Lynn is leading that. So please connect with Lynn. Lynn, if you've got your LinkedIn, drop it there in the chat. Good. Janaki asked, does that mean leaders do not give feedback about the past? Feedback is only about the past, right? We can't give feedback about the future. That would be Feedforward. Do they give feedback? Yeah, feedback is important. And I should probably specify when I reduce the value of feedback, I'm talking about a robust 360 assessment at the start of an engagement. Feedback is also, hey, how did I do in that meeting? Hey, we just had our one-on-one, and last week you said that I tend to, let's say, go off topic. Today I really wanted to show you my seriousness. How did I do? Right? That's feedback. That's telling people your needs matter, and I want to be the best I can at addressing them. So yes, leaders do get feedback and they give feedback, and it should be continuous, but it should also be localized. It should also be contextualized. Good. Thank you, Janaki. Oslem. Let me check. Okay, they are not here. Petra. Okay, I've got two other questions. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have questions, throw it in the chat. Otherwise, I will get these last two and we'll call it a day. Oslem, respectfully and totally disagree about 360. It provides valuable info and insight to coach and coachee. Cool. So I'll take a little soapbox here. And again, friends, tell me if there are big disagreements. My intention isn't to tell you that life is the way that it is. My intention is to say, maybe it's a little different, and to just point out the areas where improvement may be possible. So we're clear, 360, I agree, provides valuable info and insight to the coach and coachee. No disagreement there. My argument is, I don't see a compelling link between the valuable info and insight the coach and coachee get and their ability to shift perceptions of the people around them. What I mean by that is if you stratified the top 10% leaders and the top 10% organizations in the world, generally the kind of people we all want to be coaching, would we be in agreement if I said the vast majority of them, if given the choice, 3 attempts to pick what is probably most important for them to work on, 90+% of them are going to get it right? Is that a fair statement? The remaining 10% within 3 attempts, everyone's going to have an answer that's probably 80% good enough. I think one of the reasons I'm rallying against feedback or asking the question and grappling with the idea that maybe coaching can be just as effective, yet more painless by foregoing a robust 360 at the outset, is because stakeholders care far less about what you are working on then that you're working on it. As Dr. Wagner, as Frank would put it, oh, he hates when I call him Dr. Wagner. As Frank would put it, Frank would say the goal almost doesn't matter. Throw a dart. What matters is showing up every day saying, Laura, your needs matter. I don't know what they are yet, but I intend to learn and I intend to fulfill them. Where should I start? That's what matters. And if I picked, I want to be better at tying my shoelaces, and she gives me a suggestion and I action it, and I do that for 6 months, and she says, wow, you're really a better shoe tire. Guess what? When I go and say, well, what do you think of me as a leader? She's going to give me that answer. She already knows I'm going to do something with it. So whether you call this a leadership development process or a coaching process or a reputation management process, a perception improvement process, this is a very human experience. All of us have needs. All of us have wants. All of us want to be seen more than we are. All of us want to be heard more than we are. All of us want to feel more important than we do at this moment. That's true universally. Stakeholder Centered Coaching gives you the framework to say, your needs are important to me. That is non-trivial things. Now, the thing I want to wrap up with is everything we've talked about so far. It's a profession. It's a methodology. When we die, civilizations rise and fall. They have for centuries and generations long before us and will continue long after us. Never have we been at a point of this level of connectedness. Never have we been at a point at this much social interaction. Never have we been at a point where this much social interaction is draining us, where there's nowhere to hide because there's always another post, there's always another news feed. If we today, as a collective of coaches, band together and say the world needs to be seen more and heard more and feel more important, and as a coach, I want to find the people who want to create that reality too. And I'm going to commit myself to helping them create that reality. That is how we change the world. In the meantime, we're changing clients, we're changing stakeholders, we're changing lives. But we're also in this for something much bigger. So I invite anyone who has heard this and feels compelled that leadership is a social process, that intentions don't put points on the board. Coaching behind closed doors based on my expertise is okay. It's a good start. I want to challenge us to say real leadership doesn't happen in an office. It happens in the meeting room. It happens in the boardroom. It happens in the elevator. Real leadership happens between spouses, between partners, between friends. Real leadership happens when you say to your children, how do I be a better father? Thank you for your input. If you feel compelled about this today, join us. This is the mission we're on, and we're not doing it privately, and we're doing it for free. Today you learned this. We'll be sharing more in the coming weeks. Be sure to check in to see what we're up to. And besides that, ladies and gentlemen, this has been a delight. Thank you for joining. This has been Stakeholder Centered Coaching, where we believe everyone deserves a stakeholder-centered leader. Thank you for being a part of this. Say goodbye on your way out, ladies and gentlemen, and overall, go and do something meaningful for people who matter. We will see you all. Thank you. Thank you, Albert. It was great to have you. Thank you, Verpi. Great to have you. Thank you, Magoyan. Thank you, Inma. I got Inma this time. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Lynn. Oh, this is wonderful. Guys, this is my life. This is what we're committed to. You can expect us to be here constantly and do nothing but demonstrate stakeholder-centeredness, generosity, and empathy for the world we have ahead. Thank you, Philemon. Good to see you. Inna, Lynn, beautiful. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I will be closing the room here in the next 5 seconds. Actually, next 5 seconds. Please say goodbye on your way out. We'll see you in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bye-bye, everyone.